More than half of Americans are reportedly considering taking an extra job to meet ends. Employees in the US are combating the soaring prices of essentials like groceries, housing, and gas by looking for ways to increase their incomes and cut down on expenses, according to a new study by Qualtrics, a software technology company. The survey of more than 1,000 full-time employees found that 38% of workers have looked for a second job, while another 14% are planning to do so. Now, working parents are especially pinched, as nearly 70% said that their pay isn't keeping up with costs, the poll states. About 47% of employees with children have looked for a second job, higher than the rate of workers overall. The cost of raising a child through high school has surged to more than 300 grand, up roughly 26,000 from 2 years ago, according to a recent Brookings Institute estimate. And the thing is it's not unusual, as I'm sure many of you know, for American workers to work multiple jobs and also have side hustles, because who doesn't have one? But people are finding that it's even more impossible just to live on just one source of income and maybe a side hustle. As of September, 7.8 million Americans are working more than one job, making up 4.9% of the total workforce, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A record 440,000 Americans were working 2 full-time positions in August, compared to 308,000. Wow, in February of 2020. Bear in mind, that statistics, that is people working 2 full-time jobs. 2 full-time jobs. Wow, not just some side hustle occasionally. And in addition to working multiple jobs, to cope with higher costs, some workers are seeking more shifts or hours from their employers, while others say they're looking for a higher paying job. Almost 6 in 10 want the chance to work overtime or extra shifts, while about 4 in 10 have searched for a new job with higher pay. It's incredible how much people are slaving away and spending their time to try to just simply afford the basics. It really tells you that our leadership is not taking care of we the people, but using us as slaves to continue to produce its capitalistic system. Cenk.
Yeah, so in the old days, we used to have one person working in the family. Okay, now, was that ideal? No, because women generally didn't have the freedom to work at way back in the day, right? It's actually not way back in the day, it's just a little back in the day, right? So then we allowed that freedom, that's great, that's wonderful. The problem is that corporatism started to take over, and then you couldn't keep up with any of the costs, right? And the companies figured out ways to squeeze not just their customers, but their employees. And they created this vice grip. And then they took over the government, and the government let them do whatever they wanted. So then all of a sudden, it wasn't optional anymore. You had to have both people in the marriage or relationship working. Now, both people are starting to get to a point where they need 2 jobs. So you need 3 to 4 jobs per family to keep up. I mean, so, Adrian used a harsh word there. But I mean, whatever you want to call it, indentured servitude, oppression of any sort, it still is the same idea. Back to the mines, back to the lines, okay? The assembly lines. And there's no government to protect us, there's no one to help us. So they're extracting all of the wealth. By the way, they're also killing our competition, which is against capitalism, because this is corporatism, where corporations try to establish monopolies and the government helps them to do that. And they also have leverage over their own employees. For example, once your health insurance is tied to your your employer, it's harder for you to leave because your life might literally depend on you staying with your employer. Well, now they got you. You want to say that's a shackle, a chain? Well, in a sense it is, isn't it? Right? If you lose one job, you're screwed. A lot of people can't afford $400 hit to their pocketbook. That will send them into bankruptcy, into being broke, having no money in their bank account. It's like 40% of the country. So this is the giant disconnect between Washington and the rest of the country. Look at that first number Adrian read to you. 38% are doing it now, and 14% are thinking about doing it. That's 52%, that's more than half the country saying, I need a second job. And a lot of them have partners who also need a second job. And meanwhile in Washington, they don't understand that at all. They're like, okay, well, who should we blame on for inflation? Should we blame the Federal Reserve for printing trillions of dollars and handing it to the banks? No way, no. Should we blame the oil companies, which we're going to get to in a second, that are having record profits? No way, no. Whose fault is it? The workers, their wages are too high. So the Republicans say insane things like that, and the Democrats don't push back. And so here we are. I mean, I remember when inflation broke out, we showed it to you here on the Young Turks. It wasn't just Fox News, it was Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. All of their pundits, all of their anchors say, the wages are too high. That's what's causing inflation. Wages are too high. Does it look like wages are too high? That's an insane point to make.
Absolutely, and the thing is that study does not necessarily indicate in terms of the race and gender divide, because the reality is we know that women and also individuals from marginalized racial groups make less money. So you might be working just as much, but you're making maybe a dime on the dollar, so to speak, and thus you have to get another job and work more. And if research for my book serves me correctly, it's also a reality that Black and Hispanic women are more likely to have multiple jobs than anyone else. And it just tells you that there is a segment of our society that is grinding and has been grinding for a very, very long time, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. And yet no one has really responded. But now that we are just about all in that same boat, now it's getting more attention. And something that's also getting attention is oil companies and the fact that they are making so much money hand over fist while people are struggling to be able to afford gas to put into their cars. We just found out that Shell, one of the oil and gas super majors, they call them, well, the numbers came out today, and Shell will buy back $4 billion worth of shares and increase its dividends by 15%. After posting another gigantic quarterly profit thanks to strong oil and gas prices. The additional buybacks will increase total share purchases for the year to $18.5 billion, some 10% of the company's share capital. And entities like Shell, they're able to do these stock buybacks because of their sky-high profits. CNN also said this: the UK company posted net income of 9.45 billion in the third quarter, more than double the 4.1 billion it recorded a year ago. The result was driven by a strong performance in its oil exploration and production business, Shell said. The third quarter performance means that Shell has reported profit of more than $30 billion for the first 9 months of the year, 58% more than it recorded for the whole of 2021. It posted a record 11.5 billion profit in the second quarter when oil prices were above $100 a barrel. Basically, oil companies are advancing their executives and investors using inflation and global instability as a cover, while American consumers are struggling getting multiple jobs because of the exorbitant prices are out there. This is an absolute joke, and our leadership is not protecting us. Cenk.
Yeah, so a couple things to emphasize here. So why are the oil companies making money hand over fist or over barreled? Because of supply and demand. So it has to do with a little bit about the Ukraine war. It has to do with OPEC restricting the supply, et cetera, right? So that's simple economics. Now, that's not the controversial part. So but remember, those market forces allow them to set a higher price, but they still choose to set that higher price. And if you say, well, of course they're gonna choose to set the higher price, for the same cost, they're gonna have a much larger profit. Well, of course you're right. That is how corporations work. I understand that phenomenon, and whether you can live with that phenomenon is a different thing, because some people say, hey, we should do a windfall tax, et cetera. So that's an interesting conversation. But the main point I wanna make is, when I see people on TV and people in the New York Times and all of mainstream media saying, no, we can't do $15 minimum wage, we can't do paid family leave, we can't do child tax credit because it would drive up inflation. And that's what's causing this. Anything that helps the American worker is what's causing inflation. Oh, the oil companies, of course not, don't be ridiculous. They just had record profits. If they were hurt by inflation, they say, well, okay, this is where supply and demand is, but I'll tell you what, man, people are not, they just can't pay it. And so we're also gonna take a hit. The customers are gonna take a hit and we're gonna take a hit. No, they're not taking any hit at all. They're making record profit. They're making more money than they did before. But yet, all of the liars in power, whether they're on TV and in media or they're in Washington as politicians, will tell you, no, it's not the beloved corporations. It is not. It is not the beloved oil companies. No way. Those poor guys, they're also suffering so much under inflation. Total, utter lie. 100% provable lie. We just showed it to you, right? No, it's really the workers' fault. No, Manchin and Sinema say, and Biden bows his head. Of course not. No child tax credit, no paid family leave, no higher wages. No wages for you. The oil companies get everything. Look at what they just did. That's a buyback. They're having the time of their lives. If they were under duress, they wouldn't be doing buybacks. They'd be investing into their product. They'd be maintaining cash. No, they're like, they're literally swimming in money. So they extracted $4 billion worth of wealth. They're allowed to do that, but it tells you that inflation, of course, is not your fault. You'd have to be the marketing arm of corporate rule to say something so absurd. Oh, that's right. That's exactly what mainstream media is. Don't believe them that they're doing news. They're just trying to get you to bow your head to the status quo and to this absurd state of affairs where you all have to suffer and get a second job while they extract billions in wealth on a daily basis. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.